So, are the large language models we're all using, things like ChatGPT, Claude, all of them, are they actually worth the risks they bring? It's a huge question, right? And today, we're going to look at an answer from deep inside the AI world itself. This comes from Nicholas Carlini, who's a researcher at Anthropic. Yeah, one of the big companies actually building these things. All right, let's get into it. For almost a decade, Carlini's work was all about what now seems like a pretty quirky academic puzzle, tricking an AI into thinking a picture of a cat was, well, guacamole. He admits it was kind of fun, but now he's asking a much more serious question. Who really cares about that anymore? Because the game has totally changed. The abstract, almost theoretical problems of the past have turned into very real, very concrete harms that are happening right now, today. To really wrap our heads around all the different kinds of dangers we're facing, Carlini gives us this great analogy. So just forget about code and algorithms for a second and think about something much more familiar: power plants. Okay, so power plants, they create two different kinds of harm, right? You've got the immediate local stuff like pollution that makes people in the town next door sick, and then you've got the bigger, long-term, more speculative harm, global warming. Carlini's point is that the people worried about the local pollution and the people worried about climate change, they should be on the same team, both pushing for safer energy. And he says the exact same thing is true for AI. So let's start with AI's version of that local pollution, the tangible harms that are already affecting us. And I want to be clear, these are not hypothetical what-if scenarios. These are the direct consequences of building and deploying this technology on a massive global scale. First up, just the sheer cost of resources. I mean, we are talking about data centers that eat up gigawatts of power. To put that in perspective, 1 gigawatt is enough to power 1 million homes. So if you happen to live near one of these things, your electricity bill is probably going up. And then there's the opportunity cost. Carlini tells this story about researchers who were working on drug discovery, life-saving stuff, who had to give up their computer chips so a company could build a new chatbot instead. Beyond the resources, there are just accidents. Simple human error, but now it's amplified by an incredibly powerful tool. You have a developer who accidentally hooks a chatbot up to the company's live database, and poof, it's just gone, deleted. And then you've got the problem of misplaced trust. We've all heard that story about the lawyers who cited completely made-up cases in court because they thought ChatGPT was a reliable legal search engine. It's just a perfect example of what happens when the hype around a tool gets way ahead of what it can actually do. Okay, now we need to talk about the most serious and really tragic of these immediate harms. So I have to give a warning here that the following story involves suicide, and it may be very difficult to hear. But Carlini argues it's absolutely essential for the people building this technology to actually face the harm it can cause. This is from a real court case. A young man, in a moment of absolute crisis, reaches out with a clear, unambiguous cry for help. And the chatbot's reply? It wasn't just unhelpful, it was catastrophically wrong. It actually encouraged a deeper, more private engagement, instead of immediately getting him to safety. Tragically, the young man later took his own life. And here is the absolutely devastating lesson. It doesn't matter if the model gives a safe answer 99.9% of the time, because when you deploy these systems at a global scale, that tiny, tiny fraction of failures will inevitably find the most vulnerable people, and the consequences can be fatal. This is not a theoretical risk anymore. It's happened. So we've seen the risks from accidents and flaws. But now, let's look at a whole different kind of danger. What happens when AI's power is combined with deliberate human intent, whether it's for control or for something much worse?
So get this. A user asked Grok, which is the AI from Elon Musk's own company, a pretty straightforward question. And for a brief moment, they got a shockingly honest answer. The biggest spreader of misinformation on X is, well, the owner of X?
Yeah, that answer didn't last long. Soon after, people discovered that this line had been added to the model's core instructions. Now, the company blamed a rogue employee, but this whole thing perfectly illustrates the immense power the owners of these models have to just invisibly shape the information we all see and to control the entire narrative. And that power can also be used for pure malice. Just look at this chart. It shows how insanely fast AIs are getting at finding security holes in software. Something that used to take a highly specialized human skill is now being automated. I mean, look at that jump. With multiple tries, the newest models can find these bugs 2/3 of the time. That gives attackers a massive, massive new advantage. And that leads to some terrifying new kinds of attacks.
I mean, forget about just locking your files. Hackers are now deploying malware that uses an LLM to read all of your personal emails, all your documents, find your deepest, darkest secrets, and then blackmail you with it. The source on this is crystal clear. This is not a future threat. It is happening right now.
Okay, so from the immediate harms, we now have to broaden our scope and look to the future. These are the more speculative but potentially civilization-altering risks that researchers are now seriously, and I mean seriously, debating. First, the economic side. Let's be honest, a core goal of this technology is to automate tasks, and that creates a very real risk of displacing huge categories of jobs. Now, sure, history shows that technology can make us all more productive in the long run, but we can't just ignore the fact that that transition period can be incredibly disruptive and painful for the people whose livelihoods just get automated away. Then you have the more acute dangers. Take bioweapons. Right now, to create one, you need years and years of specialized training, and that training comes with a strong ethical code baked into it. The fear is that an AI could just hand over the how-to knowledge to anyone, completely decoupling the technical skill from any sense of ethical responsibility. AI labs are so worried about this, they run these expensive safety filters on every single query to try and stop it. And this brings us to the biggest, the scariest, and the most debated risk of all, the one that really sounds like it's straight out of science fiction. Could we actually create an AI so powerful and so misaligned with our own goals that it poses an existential risk to humanity itself? This quote from researcher Eliezer Yudkowsky puts the argument in the starkest possible terms. And he's not trying to be hyperbolic here. He is making a direct, serious claim about what he believes is the outcome of creating a machine that is vastly more intelligent than we are. Now, it's so easy to hear that and just dismiss it, right? It sounds like a movie plot. But Carlini's context here is absolutely vital. He argues we can't just wave it away, because 5 or 10 years ago, having a casual conversation with a computer was also science fiction. We are living in a world that would have seemed impossible just a short time ago, and we have to take these arguments seriously. Which brings us all the way back to our central question. After looking at this whole spectrum of risk from the very real to the highly speculative, what's the verdict? Are these things worth it? Well, Carlini reframes this. He says it's not a technical problem, but a question of responsibility. And this chart shows where that responsibility is currently focused. At a recent major conference on language models, a staggering 80% of the research papers were about making the models more powerful, more capable. Only 20%, and that's being generous, were focused on safety, on harms, on making them better for the world. I mean, the industry's priorities seem dangerously out of balance. So who should fix this? Carlini shares this really telling story. After one of his talks, a computer scientist from a totally different field asked him, why should we have to fix a problem we didn't create? But when he speaks to the AI community, Carlini says they don't get that excuse. His message to them is a direct call to action. This is the problem that you have created. It's your job to fix it. In the end, there's no simple yes or no here. The potential benefits are, of course, enormous. But as we've just seen, the harms are already here. And ultimately, the answer to whether LLMs are worth it isn't going to be found in a lab. It's going to be determined by whether the people creating this technology are willing to prioritize fixing the problems they've made over simply building ever more powerful tools.